What do you say, everybody? Welcome to Monday Night Quarterback here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. We're going to talk Alabama. We got some recruiting with Joseph Hastings. We'll talk some hoops. We'll talk about the combine and practice starting and baseball and softball. A lot of stuff to get into today, including Alabama, at least an SEC champion in basketball. If they lose their next two games, it would be a tie, right? Figuring that Texas A&M is going to beat Ole Miss and then they play Alabama. But you know what? They beat Auburn and they're cutting the nets down Coleman Coliseum on Wednesday night. So let's get into all that. But first, let me remind you guys that we want you to give a like. Give us a like, man, as you watch the show. Thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for being here. Now that we're part of On3, we want you to be part of On3 as well. And the show's brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums. All right, first up, as always on the show, our team reporter at Bama Insider, Mr. Clint Lamb. What's up, dude?
What's up, Mick? How you doing today, brother?
Good. I actually was doing good, except when I jogged today, I felt like, man, my chest is really itching and burning. What's going on here? And when I got home, I realized that it wasn't the fabric sticking to my shirt. A bee had actually gotten into my shirt and stung me a bunch of times. How crazy is that?
Mick, I didn't see that coming. You could have given me 30 guesses, and I wouldn't have picked bee got in your shirt.
Yeah.
So
and I just had him in there. Like he was just,
he was trying to get out, and you wouldn't let him.
I didn't know. I just was like, gosh, this shirt, what's going on here? So I'm a little sore, but you know what? That's par for the course. I was actually broadcasting a Cubs game one time, and we were 2 outs in the ninth inning. And I was talking through one of these microphones, but I thought I had my headsets on just because I was locked into the game. I felt something on my head, and I've reached up to adjust my headphones, and there was none. It was a bee, and it stung me on the hand. So I finished the game with Ron Coomer with my finger swelled. Yeah, with my finger swelled up. So those are my bee stories right there.
My brother's the same way. I think I was stung by a wasp once, but I swear growing up, he got stung like every other month. It was even in months where there are no bees. He'd still find the bees and he'd get stung. Sounds like you're the same way. You got a lot of fun stories.
They just they're attracted to me for some reason. Great to see all you guys in the comments section too. Roll Tide as we hang out here on the site. All right, we got a lot to get into. Let's start with football. It is Monday Night Quarterback. The combine is coming. There's a lot of guys that are going to be drafted out of Alabama's program into the NFL. And look, if things fall a certain way, the first two picks could be coming from Alabama.
It is possible, yeah. I think right now, most people would tell you that the kind of top three players are Bryce Young, Will Anderson, and Jalen Carter out of Georgia. It's a matter of what does how do things fall, right? Because the Chicago Bears, if it was the Houston Texans, we would say, okay, they're going to go quarterback. It's a matter of determining which one. With the Chicago Bears, they have Justin Fields. Do they trade him away and take one of these quarterbacks? Do they trade the number one overall pick, which is where it's kind of trending? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of uncertainty. We don't know who's going to hold the number one pick before it's all said and done because Chicago's shopping it. I guarantee you somebody's going to move up. It might be Houston just moving up one spot. Could be the Indianapolis Colts sitting there at number 4. Could be one of those, teams, like the Carolina Panthers sitting at number 9. So many possibilities. But it might not necessarily be for Bryce Young. Like that's kind of been the understanding is that he's one of those top 3 prospects and the top quarterback. But, people are expecting him to check in around, 5'10", 5'10 and a half at the combine. And there's some concerns about durability. Anthony Richardson's a guy who's getting a lot of buzz early in the draft process. Will Levis is another one. You've seen him at the top, according to some mock drafts. And then also you've got CJ Stroud. So it might not be Bryce Young, but I think people are making a huge mistake if they take anyone other than Young.
Right. Hey, look, I don't disagree with you. Anything about the combine and the process that has surprised you?
Not really. I think nowadays, like the news broke earlier this morning, actually, that Bryce Young is only going to interview with teams. He's not going to participate in any of the combine drills, on-field drills. And Will Anderson Jr. he's not going to be a full participant either. He's going to participate in some stuff. He's not going to participate in everything. And I think that shocked a lot of people. But at the same time, I don't think Bryce Young has a whole lot to gain in a combine-like setting.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to be super impressive physically. His arm strength is above average. I don't think it's elite. What he does as far as mental processing and pre and post snap, all that stuff, he's not going to be able to put that on display. So, he thrives in chaos when everything's breaking down around him. And you're not going to be able to put that on display in a combine-like setting. So I just don't think it really, there's nothing that's going to be there that's really going to benefit him. So he wants to wait and get, do all of his drills and stuff at Alabama's Pro Day. So I understand that.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad idea. I mean, you feel like you get to the point where there's a body of work out there that you can look at, and it's like, look, either you're going to check out that body of work or you're going to go in there and then someone's going to critique everything about you. I mean, they're going to be trying to say that he's too small, he's too thin, and all that kind of stuff. He's going to go through that. We've seen his arm strength. We've seen his ability to throw downfield. He's a winner. So I'm curious, like last time around, Mac Jones kind of in the draft slid back, and I don't remember how the whole process went, but I just remember teams talking about him, and then all of a sudden a lot of negativity hit, and then he went from maybe being someone that would have gone earlier in the draft to the Patriots. I think they had the 15th or 16th pick, right? I doubt that Bryce Young's going to go very far back. I mean, look, if the first pick isn't going to be him, I think Houston will take him at number 2.
Well, I think the biggest problem with the NFL draft is that it happens too far out from the college football season. And what I mean by that is it gives NFL evaluators and decision makers too much time to make a mistake, right? I mean, when you were just watching Bryce Young run around and do incredible things, the further you get from that, all you have to look at is what they look like in shorts and helmets, or not even helmets, and shorts and T-shirts, and what they look like, throwing the football around against air. And, teams are going to convince themselves that the athletic marvels, right, the Anthony Richardsons, like he's going to probably do extremely well in a combine-like setting. Will Levis, big, quarterback, is going to look physically impressive, is going to run well. And he's got a really strong arm. He's going to be able to put that on display. That's going to help him in his draft stock and how it's being perceived. But when you actually go back and turn on the tape and you actually watch these guys play football, which is what they're being paid to do, that's what you're going to be drafting them for. I mean, it's not a throwing contest as far as how far you can throw it or, how fast you are and all those things. Just how well can you play the game of football. I think Bryce is the best quarterback in the draft, and I'll continue to say that, regardless of what his size says. Regardless of the arm strength, there are concerns. I'm not saying he's a perfect prospect, but I still think he's the best one in this draft class for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think he is too. And I think he's going to be an excellent NFL pro. And a lot of that is going to come down to what team drafts him, because system matters. The players around you matter. But if you were building, he'd be a great guy to build around. And in the NFL, the way things are with the salary cap, it doesn't take the team a long time to get some pieces.
Absolutely. And, I'd be curious to get your take and the listeners' takes as far as where would you want him to go, right? Because there is the possibility, Houston's sitting there at number 2, and I've been a pretty big advocate for it. You've got, from an Alabama fan perspective, you would have the quarterback of the Houston Texans be an Alabama guy, a player who's supposed to be the face of the defense or one of the faces of the defense in Christian Harris. You would have John Mechie coming back, who has familiarity with Bryce Young, so you can get that Alabama to Alabama connection like you've got with Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Waddle. And then the head coach, the guy that's in charge. You wasn't a Nick Saban player, but he was kind of one of those, fan favorites before Nick Saban got to Alabama, and DeMeco Ryans. He's the head coach, so I would like that landing spot. I think the Indianapolis Colts, as far as their offensive line, their receivers, you got a heck of a running back there, so you would have a good complementary run game. I think you would be set up for better success in Indianapolis, but I personally like Houston.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. I'll take Houston. I think that would be a great fit. It's a Southern team, Dallas, Houston, and the whole state of Texas. A ton of Alabama people out there. The whole combination of having an Alabama quarterback and Alabama receiver has proved in the NFL that it really works. You talked about Tua and Waddle. Don't forget Jalen Hurts and Smitty, who were in the Super Bowl this year. But honestly, I would love to see the Ravens trade Lamar Jackson and figure out a way to get him. I think he would be such a good fit. Now, I know that's not going to happen, but I'm a Ravens fan, so I can dream here. Okay.
Hey, Ozzie Newsome is still in that building, and as long as he's there, the Alabama, player holds weight in that building.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So we'll see. That's coming up, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch all of these guys where they'll end up, and we'll be talking about them as we move forward. Hanging out with Clint Lamb on Monday Night Quarterback, brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. 1 to 5 bedroom units that go from 900 to 3,000 square feet, the oversized balconies. You got the Skygate Club on the roof. That's where we do the post-game show after every Alabama football game. I'm sure we'll be there after the 8A game, which is a lot to be determined as far as who's going to be where or what. But check them out, westgateal.com. All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk a little bit of basketball. What a weird week it's been for this team. They win basketball games. There's off-the-court stuff going on, obviously. Nate Oates has taken some hits. But look, if they beat Auburn tomorrow, they're going to be SEC champs. They already are SEC champs, but they'll be cutting the nets down. They'll be the only team that can claim that they won the SEC because Texas A&M, I think Texas A&M has a good chance to beat Alabama. Bama hasn't played great on the road. Texas A&M's been really good, and they've been really good at home. They're playing Ole Miss, the Aggies. That's pretty much a win. They fired their coach and all that. Bama's playing Auburn. And that's going to be a tough game. So nothing's been totally decided. But your thoughts on the state of the basketball program and this team?
Yeah, what a special environment, that Wednesday could potentially be, right? Because it is, Auburn is going to be in front of your home fans. It would win, the SEC. And you would also have there's been a lot of drama and emotion, and the home crowd was very much at Brandon Miller's back this past weekend against Arkansas. I would fully expect that even more so against Auburn. Obviously we know where Auburn's basketball program has been trending, and Alabama wanted to make sure that they were staying competitive, in that field. And they certainly have been able to do that. I think just with all the distractions and all the criticisms and everything else. I mean, the fact that this team is still figuring out ways to win basketball games, you can have your thoughts about the off the court stuff and everything that's transpired and some of the decisions that have been made. But when it comes to the pure basketball side of things, it's very hard not to be impressed with how Alabama's been able to kind of, keep focused and continuing to find ways to win. They haven't played great the last 2 games, but they found ways to win, and I think that's pretty big.
Yeah, look, the game against Arkansas was impressive because I think Arkansas's a team that is starting to get healthy, and I would say they're going to be really dangerous SEC tournament and then the NCAA tournament, right? Alabama's not going to overlook Auburn, but the problem is that they've just it's been Brandon Miller and then everyone else. And I didn't really feel like it was that way up until a couple of weeks ago, with all the off the court stuff going on. I think it's definitely, in my opinion, it's taken a toll on some of these guys. And I don't know how it couldn't.
Well, and what people's got to understand, because there was, an article coming out that after, the South Carolina game and after all the testimony and everything that had happened in court, all that information came to light that, Brandon Miller was actually climbing NBA draft boards and how was that even possible with all the off the court stuff that's going on? They were looking at a guy who almost had his career taken away from him. I mean, we were, before the lawyer released the 2-page statement, there were a lot of people calling for his career to be over.
That's
and for
right.
Not only him to be, done with the game of basketball, but for him to be arrested. And people are still calling for that. Don't get me wrong, but I think getting, a lot of those criticisms kind of not cleaned up, but just you've addressed them at least and gotten Brandon inside of the story a little bit more. It's been dialed back a little bit. There's not as many different things to criticize about his decision making, but the fact that he went out there and Nate Oates was a little bit rattled, like against South Carolina. It wasn't just the players, but it felt like it was every player. It felt like it was Nate Oates, the one person who was able to overcome and, in my opinion, win that game single-handedly was Brandon Miller. And he's the one that's got pretty much everything on the line right now. He's got his entire future, his entire career on the line. So I think NBA, scouts and evaluators, they see that. That is a mentality that not too many people have. And that's what's been impressive to him. I mean, I wasn't really as shocked about the fact that, he was getting as much praise from the NBA circles following that South Carolina game. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, right. And you talked about the people calling for him to be kicked off the team, kicked out of school. Luckily, we didn't have this up until recently, is that there's video cameras everywhere. So, either you're telling the truth or you're not. And look, if there's a video camera there and you can watch everything, which is the case with this, it's really easy to collaborate, obviously a story, and I believe him, but I still think that it's tough on him. I think all these guys, no one wanted this to happen. I mean, like it's such a tragic situation. I think we all feel that way. I'm sure he does too. And, sometimes in life you don't realize what's going on until it's too late. But I hope that, that something good comes out of this. I've said this from the beginning. And, but I don't want to see people like him have their lives destroyed, I mean, it could be a great example of making good decisions moving forward.
Well, I mean, he's a young kid, and what I always do in any situation is just the way I've always been. I always put myself in that person's shoes. And I think a lot of people are very quick to say, oh, I wouldn't have done that. The second I would have gotten that text message, I'm slamming on the brakes and I'm turning around. There's no way I'm going. I just don't think that's very realistic. I think back to when I was, 18, 19 years old. And even if I would have gotten a text like that, while you're driving, by the way, I don't think your full attention's on your phone. I mean, it's very possible you could look at it and say, what in the world is happening? But you're also telling yourself, well, I'm going to be there in 5 minutes. I need to see what's going on. Like something's happening. I'll be there in 10 minutes. And so you don't really think about it. And then you arrive on the scene and then, there it goes. I mean, Darius Miles gets his own, firearm out of the back seat. He hands it off and it is what it is. Like this idea that he was supposed to immediately know exactly what he meant by that and what was happening and, slam on your brakes and redirect. I just, everybody's playing this in hindsight.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, we all would have made that decision.
Yeah.
In the moment, there would be some people that would, but a much lower percentage of the people that are claiming they would actually do that. And so, I think he's a young kid. I think he regrets it in hindsight. But the legal process, it hadn't played out, but investigators, they've looked into things and they're not going to charge him. So.
Right. And I don't know. I just feel like he couldn't have known that this was going to happen. I mean, no, I
don't think Darius Miles knew this was going to happen, to be quite honest.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
You wouldn't think this is going to happen. I mean, like this isn't in their world. I mean, these guys aren't. These are elite athletes that aren't. These aren't bad kids. They're just kids, that play a lot of basketball and that they come from good families and they've been to good schools. And I just don't think that they could have even ever fathomed that something like this would happen. I just believe that. I don't know. They're kids.
And I could be wrong. I think it was a tough guy thing. I think Darius Miles thought he was going to pass that firearm off and it was going to get waved around and some threats were going to get made. And hey, you think you're tough? We're tougher. I mean, Darius Miles was one of the first people to call 911. I mean, obviously, things went crazy pretty quick, and it is a very tragic situation. And because he tried to play the tough guy, and he knew what he was doing when he handed that gun off, and what could potentially happen, which is different, in my opinion, than Brandon Miller, who, I'm not convinced that he did. He's got to pay the consequences as well. I'm sure he regrets it very much, but yeah, it was a decision that he made. Other people, make decisions every day and you got to live with them. And so it's just, people are trying to assign intent and they're assuming. And that's the problem that I have with it. They could very well be right, but you can't condemn a guy and in his career based off of your assumptions and what you think happened, what you think went through his mind. It was a poor decision on his part. I think, he's definitely probably regrets it, but I mean, it's a tragic situation all the way around.
Yeah. Look, there was a time when people without facts basically could use hearsay to ruin lives. And, and thank God that we live in a country where, there's a legal system that is supposed to give people the benefit of the doubt. Right. So, it's just a tough situation all the way around. I hate seeing it. I hate the fact that this team is so special, but it's always going to be remembered by this tragedy. I mean, and rightly so.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest two victims here are Jamia and her son. I mean, and I don't think we should forget that, no. even if Brandon would have had his career taken away and everything else, I mean, that would have been absolutely tragic in its own right. But the two biggest victims here were Jamia and her son. And it's unfortunate. This is why you've got to make better decisions. There were so many different points in the entire story, regardless of what actually went down. I could guarantee you there were about 50 moments in the entire night where both parties, things could have turned out differently, had people handle things differently. And it's just, it's very tragic.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you what, it's not a good idea to have guns.
It's certainly not a good idea when you've been out, drinking, and it's I understand, having them for protection.
Right.
But whenever you start thinking or becoming the aggressor, that's a big problem.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Not taking a shot at the Second Amendment, but
no,
like you could talk about this all night. There's just so many things that went wrong, and then there's a law in Alabama where you can carry a concealed gun whenever you want, which is they don't do it in a lot of states. But I just hope that this isn't the beginning of something we're going to see a lot more of, and just praying for, like you said, for her and her son and her family and everything else. Well, that's it, Clint. Anything else that you want to get into tonight before we slide over and talk to our man Jimmy?
No, we're working our way through the off season. We got combine, and then you got, of course, spring practice is going to be coming up pretty soon. And then you got the NFL draft. I mean, before that, you got pro day, you got NFL draft, you got, college football playoff expansion. You've got, conference realignment, starting to talk about that and scheduling and how are you, who are the three permanent crossover opponents. You've got the quarterback battle that's going on at Alabama. You've got the left tackle battle that's going to be happening if J.C. Latham doesn't switch over. I could rattle off 50 things right now. The point is, very busy offseason, very interesting offseason, and I'm looking forward to tackling with you and the rest of the team at Bama Insider.
Dude, we're supposed to be at 15 minutes, but it just goes by so fast when you and I get together and we just chat it up, man, chopping it up. And don't forget, guys, go to BamaInsider.com. You can have these same conversations with Clint and Jimmy on the message board. Right now, $29.99. You can be a part of Bama Insider now that we're part of On3. And I'm really proud of what we're doing at On3 and what we're building here. And it's going to get better and better and better. I promise you, take advantage of this deal, $29.99 from now until August 31st. Thanks, Clint.
Absolutely, man.
Hey, great stuff, brother. Yeah, we'll talk to you again next Monday night.
Sounds good.
All right. Show's brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums. Let me bring him on now. And without further ado, I know he's been waiting in the wings in the green room. He's the dean of Bama Insider now. Jimmy, what's up, dude?
I like it being referred to as the green room because it's sort of like now I feel like I'm on Kimmel. I'm not on Gillespie. I'm on Kimmel.
Bigger than Gillespie. There'd be so many misspellings if it was Gillespie because nobody seems to be able to spell my name right. But that's all right. Well, Jimmy Stein, great to have you on the show as always. Lot to talk about. let's get into something. I'm glad that you put this on here. I ask these guys each week. I say, hey, what do you want to talk about? Because they're working on a lot of stuff on BamaInsider.com. I want to make sure that we kind of echo the things that they're working on or want to talk about, right? And you said the 2023 football schedule. And I'm glad because I had this conversation earlier talking about how weak Georgia's schedule is. There's no losses on their schedule. Alabama has another really tough year schedule.
Right. It is tough when you're playing in the toughest conference in college football, and you're also in the toughest division of the toughest conference. That's why Alabama never needs to apologize for their schedule. I know, one thing about fans, they can be really demanding. And I think what fans ask you to do, Mick, is they're like, I want you guys to play the toughest schedule in college football, but you need to win all the games, and none of them need to be close.
Right.
So that's kind of what the fans
and
ask,
Jimmy,
right?
if you lose on a couple of last-second plays, walk-off losses, we're going to count it the same as when the other team loses by 30 at South Carolina, or the other team gets blown out by its arch rival at home, last game of the season, right?
No, that's exactly right. It's none of the games can be close, but Alabama plays in the toughest conference in college football and in the toughest division. So you have a hard schedule every year. There's no way to avoid it. You're locked into those games. So the only things you can really avoid, the only things you can control is your non-conference schedule and your East rotational opponent. And this year, the East rotational opponent is a game at Kentucky. And on the surface, in the history of the SEC, Mick, that doesn't sound too terrible. Oh, we go to Kentucky. That doesn't sound so bad. Well, last year's national champions went to Kentucky and only won 16-6. So it is actually a pretty tough rotational opponent when you're playing them on the road. Non-conference wise, there are two things of note. And no, they're not UT Chattanooga and Middle Tennessee. Those aren't of note. What are of note is at South Florida, which is kind of strange. That's the oddity in the schedule this season is you're going to a group of 5 team. Second difficult hurdle non-conference wise is playing the Texas Longhorns at home. Texas is good. They played Alabama within a point or two last season. They return a lot of guys. They may be preseason top 10 going into this season. It'll be game 2. Think about Alabama's quarterback situation, Mick, where you're going to have either the incredibly inexperienced Ty Simpson or the largely inexperienced Jalen Milroe, and you're playing a Texas team that's in the top 10, and this is in game 2. So non-conference-wise, fairly demanding compared to the rest of America, right, where you're bringing in Texas and you're going to a group of 5 opponent on the road. And then your rotational opponent is at Kentucky, who played last year's national champions within 16-6. So it is a tough schedule. It's a tough schedule every year. It's certainly a schedule Alabama doesn't need to apologize for in any way.
Right.
And if Alabama gets through this schedule at 12-0 or 11-1, you can bet that Alabama will be in the college football playoff picture one more time.
Yeah, look, I don't think it's quite as tough as last year's schedule, but it is tough.
Correct.
Just because the 5 road games that they played this past year were tough, the 5 toughest road games. Look, I don't think playing USF should be that tough of a game on the road. I'm glad that the Texas game is at home. Ole Miss is at home. That's going to be good. At Mississippi State, look, Bama wins there just about every year. Roll it up, Chris. I want to see the rest of it. There we go. At Texas A&M will be a tough one. They lost there last time. Arkansas at home, Tennessee at home. I like that. LSU at home, right? You should win those. At Kentucky, you're right. It's going to be a tough game, but I think it's winnable. Chattanooga, and then at Auburn's the toughest game you ever played if you're at Alabama, right? So, but it's not like last year where you're looking at it and I'm going, man, there's 5 games I think they could lose on here.
Well, it is true. I completely agree that last year's schedule was more difficult because all the best teams you played were all road games.
Yeah.
And road games mean everything. It's great stats that were on the Talk of Champions message board in the past week. We talked about this a lot last week. Crazy that in the SEC, Mick, the SEC had the second worst road record among all conferences. If you just looked at the road record among all conferences, the SEC was the second worst. And you're like, that's impossible. The SEC is the best at everything. Well, here's the problem, Mick. When you go on the road in the SEC, you're probably going to lose.
Yeah, right.
So the league as a whole, and I'm butchering this because I don't have it in front of me, but the league as a whole was something like 37 and 34 on the road, something along those lines. But the point is, when you go on the road, it's crazy tough in this league. Georgia, the national champions, undefeated national champions, they only played Kentucky within 10. They struggled at Missouri.
I know.
So playing road games in this league is incredibly tough. Last year, Alabama, all 4 road teams were ranked in the top 10 in the nation at the time the game was played.
Yeah,
that is nuts.
It's crazy. Look, if Georgia would have played Alabama's schedule last year, they would have lost 2 games. I believe that. No doubt.
I agree 1,000,000% while at the same time acknowledging that Georgia is rightfully the college football's national champion. They are well-deserved, but I agree completely, Mick. It's about who you play. Bino Cook, one of my favorite college football characters of all time, would forever talk about home field advantage in college football. And that was years ago, but nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. He always said, I think Bino is famous for saying, Germany lost World War II because they played Russia on the road.
Yeah.
And that's so SEC, really. So, but the schedule's lighter this year, Mick, because the road schedule isn't quite as tough, but it is still a really difficult schedule. And the point I was making today on the Talk of Champions message board is this. I think, under Nick Saban, 11-1 has been the most common result. Believe it or not, it's not 12-0. The most common result under a Nick Saban leadership has been 11-1. So if you're looking at the schedule, like, okay, if the team is most likely to finish 11-1, what is the most likely loss? So that's one thing we talked about today. And in my view, and feel free to disagree because I'm looking for people to talk me out of my opinion. But I thought the most likely loss was the game at Texas A&M. And this is why. It's on the road. Winning on the road is tough. I think A&M is the toughest road opponent. Some people argue it's Auburn. I agree. As a matter of fact, Alabama has lost 2 of the last 3 at Auburn, and it was a Bryce Young miracle away from that being 3 for 3. So winning at Auburn has been very tough for Alabama lately. I think that A&M game's a little tougher just on quarterback alone, whereas as we speak, Robbie Ashford's going to be Auburn's quarterback next season. Connor Wigman, A&M's quarterback, I thought was really impressive down the stretch as a true freshman 5-star quarterback. I think on quarterback alone, the game at A&M a little tougher than the game at Auburn. But, hey, maybe both of those games are at the very top of games that Alabama is most likely to lose if you have to pick out a game where you're like, I don't know if Alabama's gonna get that one.
And it's exciting kind of looking at the schedule and knowing that football is not too far away. Hey, message board, guys in the comments section, thank you so much. Bob, see you over there. Gil, thank you for the kind words. Jersey Dolphins hanging out with us tonight. B. Wood, George, all you guys. Tim, thank you for being here tonight. And Roll Tide, man. Terrell, same thing. John, thank you, guys. We love the comments. And don't forget, go over to BamaInsider.com, and you can hang out with Jimmy and you can hang out with Clint, and they're constantly going back and forth talking about all the issues of the day that are concerning to us, Alabama fans. So check that out. All right, let's talk Bryce Young in the draft. I think that he is going to end up going first or second. Throwing it out there. I don't think he's going third.
Yeah, I would vote. I would vote that way myself. I think he'll be one or two, most likely number one. I think it's really interesting today. Obviously, this week's the NFL Combine. Really interesting report today. Todd McShay, one of the great NFL draft experts, really appreciate Todd's work in this. Todd, by the way, has been very, very high on Bryce. He's extremely complimentary of Bryce, and in his projections has Bryce going really high. But today, Todd McShay notes that this week it's going to come out that Bryce may weigh in at 5'10" and a half, not 6 foot, as Alabama's listed him in the trusty media guide. Todd is saying 5'10" and a half, and he brings up a valid point. I know Alabama fans, anytime we hear anything that we can perceive as negative, we sort of lash out. But it is a fact that there just hasn't been a lot of 5'10" and a half, 185-pound quarterbacks taken number one. These are multi-million-dollar guaranteed contracts. General managers are betting their careers, on these picks. And whenever you have an outlier, it's sort of crazy to hinge your career on an outlier. And Bryce, due to his size, would be a true outlier in terms of being a number one pick at that size playing quarterback. So the question you have to ask yourself is he truly the exception to the rule? Because, the typical NFL quarterback, as you know, is, 6'4" and 220 pounds and is sort of, the guy that stars in the action movie, right?
Yeah.
Well, lately we've had a Kyler Murray taken number one. We've had a Baker Mayfield. We had Drew Brees setting the all-time record for passing yards. Russell Wilson is a significant player in the league, to say the least. But it is interesting. I mean, I love the draft, whether it's an Alabama guy at the top or not. And but it is a really interesting thing to discuss. Are you betting your literally these NFL GMs? They make a lot of money too, Mick, right? I mean, Are you betting your career on the first 5'10" and a half, 185-pound guy? That's what makes it super interesting. But I think, us Alabama fans, we've been betting on Bryce for a long time. We know not to undersell Bryce. We know how special he is. He truly is. But it makes this draft more interesting than any other. And it's understandable when people have these questions about his size.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we'll find out really soon, as we move forward here with the draft coming. And we'll find out if Todd McShay is right. Maybe Bryce Young is 6 foot. I remember the hand size was an issue a couple of years ago with a quarterback, and he did pretty good for the Steelers with those small hands last year, right? So we'll see what happens here with that. Let's switch gears and talk about some of the other sports. First off, your take on basketball. Clint and I kind of talked about it a little bit. Your perspective, though, on what we're looking at with this team, a win away from cutting the nets down, and they have a big showdown tomorrow against the Auburn Tigers.
That's really what I'm happy about. Yeah, Wednesday against Auburn. Real happy about, cutting the nets down to win an SEC regular season championship. That's not something that's happened at Alabama a whole lot. It's not Kentucky. It's not something that there's a long history of. And winning the regular season is a bigger deal to me than winning the SEC tournament. Doing it over 16 games, doing over 18 games. Me and Mick are both huge baseball fans, and it's not 162 games, but winning your division in Major League Baseball, you do it over the course of 162 games. That's harder to do than winning a 3 of 5 series in the next round. I don't care who you're playing. And basketball, to me, it's the same way. I mean, winning the SEC regular season championship is harder to do. Alabama hasn't done it a lot. And I think, one thing we never do in sports, Mick, is pause and say, wow. There's not enough wow moments with fans, but Alabama winning the SEC Wednesday night would be a wow thing. It just hasn't happened enough over history for us to just say, okay, who cares what's next? It's not a who cares what's next. It's big. It's really big. It's difficult to do. All these teams have huge budgets and spend literally, I'm not even making this figure up, every team in the league, every team in the SEC spends about $20 to $25 million trying to win the league. Every team.
Wow.
And Alabama may pull this off. And it's something, wouldn't we all be impressed if Kentucky won the SEC regular season in football? So, and I'm not making the comparison. I'm just saying that we should all just pause and say, wow, we know everything that's going on with Brandon, everything that lies ahead for Alabama as a potential #1 seed in the NCAA tournament and national recognition and maybe the SEC tournament. But I hope every Alabama fan Wednesday night pauses and says, wow, that's really impressive what Alabama just did.
Yeah, I was courtside 2002 when they won the SEC. I was still a student, and I had the student radio station passes. So I actually ran out on the court. I didn't realize like cutting the nets down in there was was going to take them, all that time to do it again. And they did it 2 years ago, and now they have a chance to do that again on Wednesday.
It's funny that you were there. I did an 8-hour round trip that night. I drove up the 4 hours from Fairhope, where we're from.
Yeah.
I drove the 4 hours up from Fairhope, won the game, turned around, drove right back.
What a night.
After midnight. But yeah, so cool you were there as a student. But yeah, I drove up and did the 8-hour round trip the last time Alabama, I say the last time, it's not the last time, but I'll never forget that night. And that's how big a deal it was.
Yeah.
Is that you would do something like that, because this is something that's just very difficult to do.
Yeah, I've always regretted not getting the Daniel Moore, Antoine Petway layup print.
Yeah.
And they're I think it's the rarest one because they only did like orders for it. You had to order it ahead of time, and people really didn't get it. I didn't have the money to get it. But being there, I still can see that play opening up and realizing like, this is it. We just won the SEC, which was really cool. And I didn't know that it was going to take 20 years to do it again, but what Alabama has been able to accomplish the last 3 years is really phenomenal. So that they at least have a share. They win tomorrow, or Ole Miss upsets the Aggies, and they'd be sole possession, or they beat the Aggies on Saturday, which is going to be a tough game for them. All right, let's talk baseball, softball. Let's talk some of the round ball. Baseball with another good series.
Yeah, they did. Still undefeated. That's hard to do against anybody. Baseball, it's not football. It's not even basketball, really. Baseball, you're going to lose. Everybody's got good players. Difficult to be 8-0. And look, the only thing I'll say about these guys is this. It's way too early, and with the competition, you can't say yet, boy, Alabama is a great team. Mm-hmm. Even at 8-0, ranked where they are, around number 20 in the country, you can't say Alabama's a great team. They haven't proven enough or accomplished enough to say that. But if they are a great team and we find out down the road they're a great team, then the first 8 games would look exactly like they have, right? I mean, this is what a great team would look like in their first 8 games playing college baseball. So maybe. Let's not pass judgment yet. Too much to be determined. Alabama hasn't been a really great the last 5, 6, 10, 12 years. But this team, maybe. A lot of experience. Andrew Pinckney there on the screen that Chris brought up. Pinckney, he's got some pro baseball ability. The Friday night starter, Grayson hit. He's a first or second team guy. There are some dudes on this team. Love the depth of talent with the bats and with the arm. So let's just say maybe this is Alabama's best baseball team in a while.
Yeah, no doubt. This one makes me feel a little bit old, and I'm going to talk about this guy, Coach Murphy. When I was the director of the university radio station, I decided that we were going to be the voice of softball, which is now on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. He was the coach. And I remember I've known the guy for a long, long time, and he just got his 1,200th win. So congratulations to Coach Murphy in softball. Even though I don't look like it, Jimmy, I guess I've been around for a while. 1,200 wins, I mean, that's a lot of wins when you only play like.
You've been around for 1,200. You've been around for 1,200 wins.
wins. But congratulations. That was awesome for him.
Yeah. And, he's a Hall of Famer. I don't know that we're going to do softball statues, but if you do a softball statue, he gets one. That's how he's built this. And really, it's not so much the team and the success year in and year out, but the Cathedral Rhodes Stadium. It's really a cathedral to softball in this sport, and that's what he's built. He's built the success. He's built that cathedral. He's built the fact that season tickets are sold out, and that everyone that's in the stadium knows every girl's name that's on the team.
Yeah.
And Alabama softball is a big, big deal, and he built that. Now, how's this team? I don't know. Jury's still out a little bit. 11-3, I think, is the record. A couple of bad losses, a couple of good wins. You still have maybe the best pitcher in the game in Montana Fouts, or some promising young hitters. I think there's a lot left to be determined. I would caution against anybody saying this team's not Alabama good. I would say wait and see. On the other hand, someone that's making their reservations for Oklahoma City, for the Women's College World Series, I'd tell you to put the brakes on too. I think there's the jury's still out, but I'm really encouraged. Let me talk real briefly about the second baseman, the infielder. She played shortstop Sunday, Kinley Cahalan. She was a National Player of the Year, graduated early. She's supposed to be in the 12th grade in Trussville, Alabama. Instead, she's a freshman at Alabama, graduating just early, just like some of the football players do, right? But she's playing in the games and is probably, certainly so far through 14, 15 games, the best hitter on the team.
Wow.
An amazing talent she is. She's worth the ticket alone. Kinley Cahalan from Trussville, second baseman, shortstop. I think she's hitting like a cool 445 when she's supposed to be in the 12th grade. That's impressive stuff, and we all know what Montana is on the rubber. So let's support these girls. It's another really good team, no question about that.
Yeah, no doubt. I was just sitting here, and I'm glad that we brought this up, because I'm talking about being in college and saying, hey, I'm the sports director at WVUA, the college station. We're gonna cover softball. It was actually a suggestion that I got from Tom Roberts. And, Tom was with the Crimson Tide Sports Network for a long, long time, and actually hired me on the CTSN, years later. But anyway, I want to send condolences out. I don't know if you heard this, but his son, Elliot, who was one of the co-owners or founders of Druid City Brewing, passed away a couple of days ago. Linda, Elliot's mom, worked for Phil Weaver, who was the guy that I rented from in college, so I'd go in and pay her my money, and got to know her too. Great people. I knew Elliot. I know his brother. And so, just sad, to hear that. And I know you've been around for a long time too. Tom couldn't be a better person. And I'll tell you, Elliot, same way. So I really feel for their family right now.
Hey, well, it's an Alabama family thing, really. It's an Alabama family thing, whether you're talking about Crimson Tide Sports Network, or the coaches, or the players, or the broadcasters, and absolutely the fans. It is a community, and no one exemplifies it better than Alabama softball. That it's a community thing. It really is, and it's a community and a family, and a very supportive group. And condolences certainly to the Roberts family. Yeah,
no doubt. All right, well, let's talk about what you got going on right now. BamaInsider.com, $29.99. You can hang out with Jimmy on the message board, talk about an array of topics, just like we've done tonight. We've gone everywhere with the show tonight, Jimmy, and people can do that as well. BamaInsider.com, now that we're part of On3, you've even got the hat to prove it. It's a great time to take advantage of a special $29.99 from now until August 31st. That gets you right up to the start of the season.
Yeah, and we're talking about every day. I'm most excited about the rankings thing I'm doing every day, ranking the Alabama football spring roster. Ranking it is 60 guys returning from last year's team, plus a couple of transfer portal guys. I'm ranking them from best player on the roster all the way down to the bottom. We're about halfway through. Here you see today did 39 to 37, and tomorrow we'll do 36 down to 34, 3 a day until we get down to number 1, and we'll see who I think happens to be the best player on the roster. But what I do is I invite everyone to, hey, let's discuss it and tell me what I got wrong, because it's the only way to learn is for someone to have a different opinion and coach you up on it. So that's what I'm enjoying the most right now on the Talking Champions message board. And trust me, I can discuss that subject all day long.
Hey, it's a lot of fun, Jimmy. Well, thanks for hanging out with us on Monday Night Quarterback. We're going to talk some recruiting with Joseph coming up, but always great to talk to Jimmy Stein, who I call the dean of Bama Insider, BamaInsider.com. Before we talk to Joseph, let me remind all of you guys that the show's brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. 1 to 5 bedroom units that go from 900 to 3,000 square feet. That's where we do the post-game show from the roof, the Skygate Club. And as you hang out with us here on Monday night, like we do every night, remember, whether it's this show, we talk recruiting with Andrew Bone, Kyle Henderson pops on. He's covering Alabama on the channel, Chris Daughtry, the entire crew. Make sure that you like, subscribe, hit the bell so you know every time that a show comes on and something's breaking, something that you want to be a part of, it'll flash on your device and let you know. So whether that's your computer, your phone, you can watch it on TV. You know that. There's just so many different ways to get YouTube right now. Thank you for checking us out and being a part of it and hanging out with us. Message board. Again, appreciate you guys as well. Keep throwing up the comments. Let's talk to Joseph Hastings. And let's bring him on. Here's our main guy. Taking in all the camps from around the country, telling us the latest on recruiting. Joseph Hastings, what's up, dude?
I'm doing pretty good, Mick. How about yourself? Everything going well on your end?
It is. Look, it is. It's a little time out on the water this weekend. The weather's been great. You know, we're kind of starting to roll into March Madness. Talked about that. Bama, SEC champs. In basketball, we just don't know if it's going to be solo or if they're going to share it with Texas A&M. But it's a good time of year to be involved in sports. We talked about the 8A game and camp and all that kind of stuff. But let's talk recruiting and kind of a lot of news, including the Under Armour Atlanta camp.
Yeah, so this past weekend I went out to Atlanta for the first of the Under Armour Atlanta Camp Series event. It's a 7-part camp event that ends in June. So it's going to be a pretty good series that they're going to be putting out there throughout the spring. And Atlanta was no different than years prior. A lot of top talent, a lot of top kids in the Southeast made their way out to Atlanta on Sunday. And we got to see them in person and also talk with them as well as seeing them on the football field and what they were able to do. It was a little bit interesting in terms of a scouting standpoint from my perspective, because they had staggered entry for when they checked in each position group. So I had to try and watch offensive line, defensive line while, running backs and linebackers were checking in, but I tried to see as much as I could. And, I talked to Charles Power, our rankings expert, about, what he got to see. And look, you see Sterling Dixon there, Alabama commit. He looked really explosive as a defensive lineman in this camp setting, which is, to me, is interesting because he's expected to be an inside linebacker or traditional backer at the next level, considering his frame and where he's at physically. But he showed off some power, some explosion off the line. You can see why he's a guy who had 18 total sacks last year, which is an incredible number when you consider the fact that he had 172 total tackles as well. So you see Sterling there. Then you also got to see Ryan Williams, who is one of the most exciting prospects, not in the state of Alabama, not just in the state of Alabama, but in the country. And you got to see why on Sunday, constantly separating himself from defensive backs, was able to use double moves at times. You see him running the gauntlet here. Just a really smooth player, somebody who can play in space. We didn't get to necessarily see him as a running back, but he's capable of taking the ball off jet sweeps and making something out of nothing. He had 2,600 total yards last year, 39 touchdowns between receiving and rushing. Was Alabama Mr. Football, won Gatorade, Player of the Year in the state of Alabama. He's just a really explosive prospect, and someone that Alabama fans are very excited about. When you talk about sophomore commitments, you're like, okay, well, you got a couple years until they sign. Like, why should we be excited? He's one of the rare exceptions. So, very, very excited to see Sterling Dixon, and then also see some other targets in attendance at the event. It was a really great camp experience.
Yeah, I think everyone always wants to know how the Alabama guys did. Even if it's just a 7-on-7 camp or, it's just a skills competition, everyone on here wants to know what the Bama guys looked like, how they did.
Yeah, so Cam Coleman, he's a wide receiver out of Phoenix City Central High School, and he's someone who went really high up in the rankings that was released on Monday, On3's 2024 On 300 rankings update, and you can see why on Sunday. He's a really big kid, explosive off the line of scrimmage in his releases. Big body, has downfield speed. Those are some of the things I was talking with Charles Power today about, just kind of what he brings to the table. And he has a lot of transferable skills too from the basketball court. Alabama offered him after seeing him play basketball, and you can just kind of tell why. He said, Charles made an interesting comment about Cam. He said, you don't want to throw out the term freaky athlete too much, because you don't want to put that kind of expectations on a young man. But he said if it was to apply to anyone in this cycle at wide receiver, it would be Cam Coleman. And he showed why on Sunday, why he rose up to number 20 in the country after previously being unranked. I mean, that's an impressive jump. And, the likes of Alabama and others are after him, and you can just kind of see why. And then we also got to see some other in-state prospects as well. KJ Lacey, Saraland High School quarterback, who's teammates with Ryan Williams there at the high school level. Alabama recently extended him an offer. Ryan would love for him to be his quarterback at the next level as well. KJ is a little bit of a small on the smaller end, kind of comparable a little bit to Bryce Young in terms of height, body frame, where they're at kind of physically at this stage in their careers. But KJ, you can obviously tell when he had those reps with Ryan. Chris played a video earlier. When they had those reps with Ryan, he was really connecting with them. They have, that connection, a sense of where each other are going to be, where KJ's going to throw the ball, where Ryan's going to be at, what spot he's going to be at. So, obviously someone that Alabama is going to be continuing to evaluate, get him on campus for a camp, evaluate him in person, as the year progresses. But KJ's, going to be the top quarterback in Alabama, most likely in the class of 2025. And you could kind of see why on Sunday. I saw him a few weeks ago. We talked about him. Really great accuracy in the pocket. Somebody who kind of has a sense of where his receivers are going to be, has really good timing, which isn't necessarily easy to do in this type of setting when you aren't working with a lot of these guys on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis. So I liked what I saw from him. And just a lot of standouts from the state of Alabama: Dixon, Ryan Williams, KJ Lacey. Just a lot of great stuff we got to see on Sunday.
Nice. Guys, as you hang out with us here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel, like and subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and make sure you hit the bell so you know when we're live talking recruiting on Monday Night Quarterback here with Joseph Hastings. Let's get into this. Shannon Terry's kind of the architect of team coverage sites. I mean, he's been Rivals, 24/7, and now with us at On3. And I read a tweet that he had put out a couple of weeks ago where they are weighing the different sites, not all the same anymore, right? And it's based on, things that I'm sure you're going to explain to us. But I think that it's obviously it's changed the ranking system a little bit. On3 has the best in the country, doing this 24/7. They're really good too. So those two are weighted high. Explain how this works now, and then let's talk about the new rankings that came out.
Yeah, so pretty much now you have, instead of a 25, 25, 25, 25 split, you have a 35 for On3, 35 for 247. You have 20% for Rivals and 10% for ESPN. And you just can kind of see what the thought process, the mindset that goes behind a decision like this. Look, I know people will claim, oh, On3 is new, and yes, 2 years old, like still kind of breaking our way and making a brand out of ourselves. But you have to understand, the person who's leading our scouting service now, our scouting director, Charles Power, previously led the rankings for 247 for the previous 4 years. So he has a lot of experience. He's been doing this for quite some time. You have Cody Belair too, who's a part of our scouting department, and they put a lot of time and effort into this. I know a lot of people think, oh, they do this for clickbait, or they do this, they're putting this guy up because this person's trending at this school. No, there's a lot of time, a lot of hours that are put into this, a lot of in-person evaluations, going out to camp settings, getting the verified measurables, doing there's a lot that goes into this, and it's a very thorough process. And there's a reason why it's equally rated with 247. We believe those are the two premier ones when it comes to scouting ranking services. And with Rivals, obviously, they have camp settings. They go to different cities. They have those camps. ESPN obviously has the Under Armour game that they broadcast, but the resources aren't necessarily there like it is with the others. So yeah, you can kind of see why the On3 industry rankings is weighted the way they are. I think it's going to be really interesting to see if this changes in the future. What the final ones end up being, but I think this is, look, Shannon Terry's always ahead of the curve. He's always innovative. He's always looking to add things to the industry. This is just another way he's done it.
Yeah, I love it. Best in the business. All right, let's talk about the new rankings, because a guy that I'm really excited about just shot up. And I think part of it is that we've seen him so much in camps, but Alabama commitment, Julian Sayin.
Yeah, Julian Sayin went from number 46 to number 16 on threes rankings. You kind of have to specify, because this was our personal update, which is going to affect the On3 industry rankings, the total, factoring in On3, 247 others. But Julian went from number 46 to number 16. If the cycle was to finish today, if we were to fast forward to February, he'd be a 5-star prospect on the On3's rankings. He's a 5-star on the On3 industry rankings now, number 17 overall. We talked about him a few weeks ago, Mick, when I got to see him at Battle Miami. I had nothing but great things to say about him. I mean, he looked like one of the better quarterback prospects, if not the best quarterback prospect in the 2024 class. The accuracy, I was talking with Charles today about him, the accuracy that he's able to display at the high school level, his high completion percentage, just of how efficient he is. He had one of the better junior seasons at quarterback in this class last year. And, there's a lot to be excited about with him. He did mention, because everyone wants to draw those similarities between Julian and Bryce Young. He did mention the distinctions about Bryce Young, being one of the best quarterbacks that he's seen in recent years in terms of facing pressure that he's ever seen in his scouting days. And he also talked about Bryce's elusivity in the pocket, being able to scramble, make something out of nothing. Julian's more of a pocket passer, as you can kind of see in these clips here, but he's well deserving of that high ranking. He could potentially vie for the number one quarterback when in this class when it's all said and done, ahead of Dylan Raiola. So once again, very, very well deserving of this. He also had some other movements too, not necessarily with Alabama commits. They mainly stayed where they were at: Perry Thompson, Jalen Mbakwe, Sterling Dixon. But you saw Jordan Ross. We had talked about Cam Coleman going from unranked to number 20. Jordan Ross rose up to number 40 in this class here. DeMarcus Riddick went from number 59 to number 37. You got to see some of these big jumps here. Dylan Stewart went from number 5 to number 1 overall. He's going to be visiting Alabama this weekend. There was some significant changes here. Also some drops too. That's typically what comes with these rankings. But have to stress, this is not the final ranking. There's still nearly a year. There's a year left pretty much until the final 2024 rankings update comes out. That's when you'll kind of see everything finalized. And after senior year evaluations, 7-on-7 camp evaluations, getting those verified measurables, seeing where everyone kind of ends up physically and production wise, that that's going to be the big one. But this is kind of an indicator of where things could potentially be this time next year.
Oh, it's exciting stuff as we follow the recruitment of Alabama's next big class, and we do it each and every Monday with Joseph Hastings here on Monday Night Quarterback. What are you working on? And let me remind everyone this too, Joseph, that they don't have to wait until Monday to find out what you're working on, because all they got to do is go to BamaInsider.com and $29.99. You can buy in right now and get all the coverage, all the great team coverage, the message boards. Clint Lamb, who you heard from earlier in the show's on there. Jimmy Stein, we hang out with him every Monday. He's on there. Andrew Bone, who we'll be talking with later this week on the channel. He's on there. There's a smorgasbord of information that Alabama has breaking. The anything that you want to know, it's available. So what are you working on?
It's right there, yeah. So I'm going to be pushing out this week. This week I'm going to be pushing out all the interviews that I had, which there were a lot of them. There was over 20 of them. I'm going to be pushing out those interviews from Under Armour Atlanta. Going to be doing that this week and next week. Going to be pushing out those conversations with Charles Power that I had regarding the rankings update and what he saw at Under Armour. And then also on Sunday, I'm going to be going to Under Armour Orlando. Some of the top prospects in Central Florida, South Florida, surrounding area, they're going to be out there. Not going to be as big in terms of Alabama targets for that event, but there will be some significant names expected in attendance. There's also an IMG Pro Day on Thursday that I might be going out to. Obviously, Alabama is one of the Final Four schools for Chris Parker, one of the top 2023 basketball prospects remaining. He's going to be committing on Friday, so we'll see if Alabama basketball lands him. So there's a lot going on this week. A lot. This week, next week. Alabama obviously has a junior day coming up on Saturday, March 4th. Spring practice is around the corner. Like you said, it's just a very exciting time right now. I got a smile on my face. It's awesome. There's a lot of stuff going on. Bryce Young, Will Anderson, potentially 2 top 5 picks, next month. There's just so much going on here.
Awesome stuff. And it's been a fun night to talk about recruiting. We'll be keeping an eye on that and everything else. Practice, dead ahead, the 8A game coming, basketball. Look, by the time we talk next week, they'll be SEC champs. We just don't know if they're going to share it or not. Big matchup against Auburn. And we'll be covering all that, Nate Oates press conferences, everything else right here on the channel. Anytime Nick Saban speaks, we get into that. New coaches, we're going to talk about that as well. Anything Alabama right here at BamaInsider.com. So like and subscribe, hit the thumbs up, be part of our channel. We're trying to get to over 100,000 subscribers. So we want more people on the channel than can fit at Bryant-Denny Stadium. And we're on the way to do that. So we appreciate you guys for helping us get there. Special thanks to Westgate Luxury Condominiums right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium for being the official sponsor of Monday Night Quarterback. Find out more information at westgateal.com. All right, that does it for the show. Chris Daughtry behind the scenes, another fantastic job. And for Clint Lamb and Jimmy Stein and Joseph Hastings, the guy that puts all this together, Mr. Kyle Henderson, everyone with On 3, I'm Mick Gillespie. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll do it again next Monday, everyone. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.